Hey, welcome to Underlords universe, where we discuss all kinds of stuff related to hard rock, prog rock, fantasy, sci-fi, etc. And today we're going to be doing a discussion of the first 6 Rush albums with Brent and Josh and our friend John Heinlein, who's up in the Michigan area, right?
Yep, in the Lansing, Michigan area,
The Lansing, Michigan area.
which is just by the way where Rush played their first live concert in the US.
Yeah, good point. Good
Yeah.
point. So tell you what, we're not gonna fiddly fart around here. We're gonna get right to it. And at the very end, for anybody who happens to be stumbling across this and watching, and they get all the way through it, we'll do a little bit on our own projects at the very end. But if you're interested to check it out, one of the things that we wanted to do when we set this up was to do it a little bit differently than other folks that rate albums. We wanted to create a rubric or a rating system that kind of pushed us to revisit the albums and to rethink them, and to kind of try to, as best we can, quantify the qualitative, which is always impossible with art, but it's a tool that we use to try to rethink these and to ultimately come up with rankings, because when you are ranking them, you are kind of quantifying them. One is rated over another, etc., for whatever reason. So and of course we all kind of looked at the system with our through our own lenses, and and came up with our ratings. But so we're going to be taking a look at Rush, the debut album, Fly By Night, Caress of Steel, 2112, Farewell Kings, and Hemispheres. We're going to discuss them in order first, and then we're going to do the rankings. So I don't know, one of you guys want to jump in and start with your initial thoughts on the first Rush album? Came out in 1974.
John, I nominate you because of your background.
I agree.
Well, it's interesting because, I was one of those kids in the early 80s that got into Rush around the time of, like moving pictures, and one of the bajillions of people that discovered them then, and had to kind of work my way backwards to figure out, what else was going on. And the first album was probably the last one that I actually bought and listened to of the first grouping. And in those days, I didn't think a whole lot of it because, compared to moving pictures, obviously it's a huge difference. But with time, I've actually come to appreciate it a lot more. It's definitely an intro album. It's definitely an album that says, all right, this is our band. We know how to play. We really like Led Zeppelin a lot, and we can play some really good stuff. Interestingly, at the time, of course, comparing John Rutsey to Neil Peart is not necessarily a fair comparison for any drummer pretty much in existence. No. Apart from someone like John Bonham or somebody like that. But he held his own for a straight ahead rock band, and I think he's part of the reason that they got launched in the first place. I think he had a lot of energy towards the band, and a lot of his effort is what kind of pushed them forward.
So what would you say are, if you had to pick like a highlight from the first Rush album, what would you say it is?
Well, it's going to be super cliche, but Working Man is pretty fantastic and pretty hard to beat. It's a great song. It's the song that launched them, in Cleveland. Yep. It's the song that everybody wants to hear. I had the good fortune of seeing them in Cleveland when they did the Time Machine tour and they did the recording. And by the time they got to that song at the end, I thought the place was going to explode. It was absolutely nuts. After hearing like the entirety of their work up to that point, and then hearing Working Man, it was the thing that sort of brought everything down. Well, and it was fantastic.
I know what show, when we're done with this, I know what show this evening I'm going to put on and watch now. So, yeah, for me, I remember when I got into Rush, Josh, you got me into Rush when Presto came out. So it was a long back catalog. But for some reason, the first album really struck a chord with me. Songs like What You're Doing, the main riff of what you're doing, just so powerful. And even though Need Some Love as a full song is a little on the cliche side, I still find the riff underneath Alex's solo to be one of the highlights of that. I still get chills when that riff comes in and he starts soloing over that. So, and I think to a point about this whole discussion here is, I'm going to take a wild guess and say none of us dislike any of these albums.
Right.
Correct.
Which makes rating them and ranking them kind of the interesting challenge. So, yeah. Brent, I mean, it looked like you were going to jump in there.
Oh, no. My comments about the debut would be pretty much, I think it's one of the standout debut albums of all time, and which is not necessarily going to be borne out by these rankings because, you know, Rush has a really stellar catalog, but love the production. I love the early 70s guitar tone. Love Alex's playing. And I like John alluded to, I do like John Rutsey's playing on this album. It's really good for what they're doing. This is a really good hard rock album. And you mentioned Need Some Love. For me, that's a 5-star song, primarily because of what you said, Brian. You know, that riff underneath, that manic and crazy and perfect solo that Alex lays down.
Yeah.
I'm just big on a working man, and as some or most people might be. But for me, that's clearly the high point on the record. I don't think there's any really low points on the record. I think it's a very balanced record throughout. I think it's very even keel. I think there's good material all the way through. It doesn't really it's not a peaks and valleys album.
For me, it actually is, but I'm gonna let Josh address any highlights from him before we go to a low point, maybe. At least
one last thing, I have no low points really. I think the lowest I gave 3 stars is the lowest I gave any track.
Oh wow! Okay, all right.
Interesting.
Josh?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a little bit different. I agree with everything everybody's saying. It's a really good debut. I mean, if you're a Rush fan, you like all their albums, and so it's not a matter of saying I dislike the album. I will say that, you know, to John's point, it was hard, you know, being the huge Rush fan in the 80s and what they've done and gotten into all the proggy stuff, and of course the addition of Neil. It's a bit of a tough listen. You know, I remember back at the time, it's like, yeah, it's okay, but it's not, you know, what they're doing now. So, you know, it is a little bit more of a peaks and valleys album for me, and it still is. So I call it a solid debut, and there's some great stuff on it. The high point, I would say, is Need Some Love. I just love that song. I love the energy of it. That riff you talked about, Brian, it's such a great riff. There's some other really great stuff on there, you know, Finding My Way. Before and After is one that I quite like as well. But I think beyond that, it gets into a little bit more kind of mid-range songs and some low points. There are some low points.
Okay,
so peaks and valleys.
You mentioned so low points for me, and I have to say this in terms of their entire catalog. I think there's only maybe 4 songs that I actually kind of would put in the dislike category of the entire catalog of their entire career. And Here Again is one of those songs for me. To me, and it's not that it's a bad song, but Here Again it almost sounds like an obligatory song. Like, hey guys, we need to write a song that's a little slower, a little more bluesy on the, you know, and it just doesn't work for me, especially, you know, coming in at over 7.5 minutes. Again, it's not bad, but it's a song that I can easily skip. And there's very few songs in their entire catalog I'd skip. I don't know. John, what's your take on any
So that's interesting because I actually have that one rated higher than the a lot of the others. I think what I like about it is going back to earlier comments about the guitar tone and so forth. As a guitar song, I really like Alex's tone and his playing on that song. Yeah, it's slow and bluesy, and yeah, it definitely sounds like we need to have this kind of song on there. But for some reason, it works. Sometimes even when you know the magic trick is happening, you're still like, yeah, I'll accept that.
and
so, yeah.
That's a good point. And I think the other thing that's kind of fun about discussing music is once somebody else says something about a song that I may not have thought about, it makes me go back to the song and go, okay,
yeah,
let me hear it again. So Yeah, I don't know, Josh, what
This-
low points for you, or what do you think about, is Here Again a low point, or do you agree
Yeah,
with John that it's
I
actually
would go
higher?
so far as to say it's probably my least favorite Rush song of all time. I don't know if we want to get into numbers yet, but I gave it a 1. It's a song I skip. And I mean, the playing on it is good, and I get it. It's like, yeah, look at us, we're like Canadian Zeppelin, so we're gonna do a blues number, because that's what you do, and they do it well. I mean, it is a well executed song if that's the kind of song you like. And for me, it's just one of those songs like we could have cut it down a little bit, maybe 3 minutes, and that might have helped.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's one of the few Rush songs I rate very low, and
Interesting.
yeah.
despite all of it. So,
Well, you might have given it a 2, correct? Maybe.
Brent, you said the lowest the score you gave on this album was a 3 or a 2?
3.
So is it Here Again?
I gave yes, I gave Here Again. That's one of the songs I gave a 3 to, correct.
Oh, okay. All right. The only, I could also kind of take a friend.
I gave that a 3. Well.
Again, there's nothing wrong with it. I don't dislike it necessarily. But in terms of how it relates to the rest of the album, I always felt that the second part of side 1 just kind of was a lull, and then side 2 it just kind of really stormed through all the way.
You might want to explain what you mean by sides.
Oh yeah, right. See these things here.
Wait, do you actually have a red one?
Yeah.
How?
Well, a few years back, actually, gosh, maybe 10 years ago or so, they put out a little box set kind of version. There's nothing extra special about it other than the pressing. It has the Moon record logo on it. And it's got just like a little poster that came with it.
Yeah, I've just got the standard. You guys can't see it because it's disappearing. It
is disappearing.
There we go. The standard Mercury pressing that most people our age probably have.
But and it's somebody who works with kids. It's funny, they are starting to some of them are kind of picking up vinyl again, but yeah, side 1,
big
side
time.
2. This is cool. It has the Moon Records logo right on the.
That's so cool.
It's very, very cool. I love that. Yeah. So any other thoughts on the debut before kind of shuffling over to Fly By Night?
I'm realizing that I gave. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm realizing as I'm looking at this that I have not given any 1s to anything yet. The lowest I've given to anything in these first 6 albums is a 2, and 2 of them are on this record.
Okay, all right.
What'd you give a 2 to? What?
Okay, well, good segue. Good segue.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Oh, you want to hear it? Okay, so
yeah.
I gave a 2 to Need Some Love.
Oh,
I have never really liked that song. I have Josh's brother Joel and I used to crack up when he says love, just the way he cuts it off. It's like there's some sort of high gain filter cutting off the end of the word.
Yeah.
And the
lyrics, this feeling I just can't rise above.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, Take a Friend was the other one I gave it to. I was harsh. These are really hard to rate because, as you said, these are songs we love. I love all of these records.
Yeah.
And they're all sort of intertwined in my life, and it's really hard to objectively look at them. So I've had to sort of like internally go, all right, compared to all the other things, where do I rate this?
I completely agree with you. And Take a Friend and Here Again are the 2 songs for me that are kind of like, but as far as the lyric goes, it's in Before and After, near the end. It sounds like Geddy. It always sounded to me like Geddy said, "And yeah, to my advice."
Yeah, I love that.
To what?
And yeah, to my advice. Go put it on a list. And it's like, I'm not sure it's actually what he's saying, but I want it to be what he's saying, so I'm just gonna go with it.
It is now.
It is now. Yeah, but yeah. So. Okay, Josh, and you said you wanted to put another thought in before.
We could talk about this record all day.
Yeah,
we should move on. But I am curious. One of the other low points for me was In the Mood. which I gave a 2.5.
I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 3.
Yeah.
I gave it a 3 as
It-
well.
To me, it's just a kind of a honky tonk number that's
Yeah.
kind of like, if I never heard this again, it would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Fly by night. Thoughts on fly by high points, low points, points of nostalgia, etc., etc.
Ooh, that is sweet. You've got that background to change.
Oh,
Oh, that shirt is the best. I do not have a fly by night shirt. I now need to get one. That is awesome.
yeah, Josh, that's a nice shirt, and that is a nice background. Since you flipped to the background, John, high points, low points. How do you want to start a little review of?
So fly by night, so I sort of, the first one I kind of categorize as here we are, we can play. This one is we have some things to say, but we're still kind of young, but we can still play. So obviously Neil's debut record and his influence definitely comes through on this. He's definitely a catalyst for them at this point, and you can already see that it's happening. So Anthem is like a reintroduction of the band as far as I'm concerned. It's like this is now what Rush is going to be. So this is Rush, which I thought was fantastic. So I really love that. Obviously Fly By Night's a great radio cut and a great song and fun to play. Easy. It's a good first Rush song to learn because it's not super hard. And the other 4 I had was the incredibly goofy and silly Bytor and the Snow Dog, just as a jam. It's one of those songs I wish I had seen them play live at some point in all of the shows that I saw, and I don't think they ever did.
Did you hit the R30 tour?
I did. Oh, they did play a little snippet of it. You're right.
They did, yeah.
Good call.
And then they also played it though on. They did play it on the Vapor Trails tour.
Did they?
Yeah.
Thank you.
They
All
did.
right.
They did.
All
Was
right.
it part of a medley?
Okay.
Say what, Brent?
Was it part of a medley, or did they play the whole track?
On R30, it was part of the medley. They did an intro to the start of the. But on the Vapor Trails tour, I think they played it in its entirety, I believe.
I need to go or look at that again.
Yeah.
So those were my high points. Do you want me to do low points, or do you want to wait?
Let's swing back around to
all right.
To low point. Brent,
but they're all good. I love this. Right, this is a great record.
Yeah. It's hard to pick a low point when you like the whole record. It's kind of the challenge, though, right? So, Brent.
Well, there is a really low point in this record, but we'll get to that later.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah,
you and I might come to fisticuffs over this, my friend.
We'll fight.
Okay, yeah,
we'll get there.
Again, kind of like I agree with what John said. Solid record, and this is kind of like, okay, we're Rush, and this is who we are. This is what we do, and they're kind of there is pun intended. They're kind of finding their way with this record, right? I think Anthem is clearly the high watermark on the record. I gave that song 5 stars. I don't think anything else really comes close to it. I got a couple 4-star songs on the record, but I think that's the high point. We'll talk about the low point later. For the most part, it's pretty consistent. I've never been a big fan of the title track. It's not bad. It just doesn't really do a whole lot for me.
You're already doing low points, brother.
Well, no. I gave it 3. I gave it 3 stars. So
okay,
like
I got you.
Song. Just not a. I'd say this record is solid, not spectacular, and it does have a really low point. Anthem's a really high.
This is funny. I have a feeling that I'm going to agree with Josh on something here, and I'm going to agree with Brent on something here, and I'm going to be curious to see where John fits into this a little bit. High points, Brent. You just said that nothing beats Anthem on this.
Not on this record, no.
I'm going to disagree. Beneath the Pink Behind and Making Memories, I think, are the 2 best songs on the record. Nothing against Anthem. I love Anthem, but
I gave Making Memories 4 stars. So just so you know, I gave that 4 stars.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Making Memories is just stellar. I love that song, and it's like one of the rare moments to hear Alex playing slide, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
slide solo.
Are there other examples of that? I was trying to think when I was looking this over of any examples, and that's literally the only one I can think of. What am I missing?
I don't think you're missing anything. I think that's it. Yeah.
Which is wild because he does really well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great solo. It's a great tune. I love that. And Beneath, Between, and Behind, I love that as well. Those are, if I was forced to pick like one song from this record, those two songs would have to really fight hard for it's really, really tough. I don't know, Josh, high points for you?
You know, and I'm a tough rater, so nothing on this album got a 5.
Ooh,
Okay.
whoa,
Um,
not Making Memories?
it got a 4.5
Okay.
because
Okay.
it's a brilliant song. Beneath, Between, Behind also got a 4.5. And it's an overlooked gem. Like, you don't often think about Beneath, Between, Behind.
Mhm.
But then when I go back to it, it's like, damn, I love this song. And you know, to John's point, By Turn the Snow Dog, 4.5.
Yeah.
I love that song. I could listen to that song any day of the week. It's so goofy and so fun, but it is just, you can see what they're going towards. And I look at this album as being more than solid. I look at this album as they're starting to approach brilliant. And I just love this album. You know, I mean, there's no real low points. The lowest, there's nothing below a 3.5 on this album. So everything's good. There are a couple that are kind of like, yeah, it's good, but there's a lot that's bordering on great. So yeah, my high points are definitely Beneath, Between, Behind, By Turn the Snow Dog, Making Memories. And
All right.
Anthem gets a 4. I love Anthem. Anthem's a great
Yeah.
song.
All right. Low points, John. I have a feeling that you're going to be able to predict Brent's low point.
Yeah, I think if I had to guess, I'm gonna go with Rivendell. And I'm gonna see that that's going to be probably a line of demarcation in the group. But
Point of contention.
the point of
I
contention.
don't know. Is it a low point for you?
Yeah, it is. It's too long.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Lord of the Rings actually came out, the last one, and it had like 1,000 endings, which I was personally fine with, but you kept thinking it was over, and then there was a little more, and then there was a little more, and then there was a little more. This song predicted that was going to happen, 40 years ahead of time.
And the funny thing is, it only clocks in at 4 minutes and 57
Does it really?
seconds. It's just under 5 minutes, and it feels like it's like 12.
It's an eternity. It's an eternity. Yeah.
Again, not a terrible or bad song, but within the Rush catalog, I always used to joke, like, what are they going to play this year? They're going to do, they're going to do a set with like Rivendell and Tears. And sorry, I'm talking ahead now, but there are some songs that they've had in the early days that were just kind of slow and plaintive, and I just didn't get into.
Okay.
But if anybody liked it, I certainly would not judge them.
Right. Josh?
Rivendell. I used to make fun of it relentlessly as a kid because of Getty's voice, and I've really come to like the song. I love Lord of the Rings, and I mean, you could argue it goes on a little too long, and it's not one of their best songs, but when this album is playing, I let Rivendell go, man. I love it. It's a good song. It's corny and evokes images of trolls and orcs and stuff, and that's what I love about it, man. When I'm playing D&D, I can throw this song on and it fits perfectly. It fits the mood perfectly, and it's not a bad song. 3.5. It's a solid song.
Okay. Hey, to each their own. To each their own. But I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Getty's actually playing the guitar.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
So.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
That's correct.
All right.
Wait, sorry, going back to that,
yeah.
Is Alex then playing the sort of slidey thing? Is this another slide? What's the other tone that you hear in that song? Is it a slide guitar? Is it something else? Like, is he like voluming up, doing like a volume swell kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because there is another tone in there.
There is, and now you've got me curious.
Yeah, now
I don't know. We'll have to,
for copyright reasons, we can't listen back to it probably, but we'll have to go listen later.
Yeah, later on. That's definitely I'm gonna make a note of that. Because now you got me curious. So yeah. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on Fly By Night before we do a quick overview of Crest of Steel?
Well, can I just say something about Rivendell?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
1 star. and I'm being generous.
Man, I gotta slap you right here.
It's just not a good song, right? It's just not. It should have been left on the cutting room floor. It's not, A for effort maybe, but it's a
I'll
snooze
give you
fest.
this. I'll give you this. The song is an experiment. It is an experiment, and maybe it's not an experiment that works so well. But why you gotta break my balls? I like Rivendell.
Well, I don't like it, all right, and you know that, and it's not a very good vocal track from him.
I agree.
And the guitar line is it's just boring. It's very milk toast, and I just don't like it.
Yeah.
So I'm giving it 1 star. It's a 1-star song.
All right.
I'm sorry, 1 star.
Okay.
I love being I love participating in this. Thank you for inviting me along.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to the future already. Okay. All right. Everybody likes to kind of knock Cress of Steel.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Nope.
Oh, no. I'm not knocking a Crest of Steel, my friend.
Nope.
Who
This
wants
is a fantastic album.
Okay.
This is, in my opinion,
Yeah.
the first prog metal album.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
I agree. And it's a darn good prog metal album. So Josh, you want to lead off this one?
High points?
Yeah.
I mean, the album's, it has my first five Rush song. Anyone want to guess?
That Steel Day?
No.
Necromancer.
I'm gonna say
Nope.
it's either Lakeside Park. I'm gonna say Fountain of Lamneth because that's the one I rated the highest.
I think I'm going bald.
Oh.
That's a surprise.
All
I
right.
absolutely love this song. I listen to this song when I need to feel good, and it makes me feel good every time. There's a lot of 4.5s on this album for me.
But you're not going bald either. That's kind of a
No,
Maybe that's the magic. But yeah, I think I'm going bald as this overlooked song. I love it. Lakeside Park is a 4.5. The Necromancer a 4.5. Fountain of Lamneth a 4.5. The Steel Day is actually the lowest song in the album, and I gave it a 4. This is a great album. It could be a desert island album for me. I love this album start to finish. There's a sound to this album. I can't describe what it is. It's just, it is absolute magic. I love this record.
Yep.
Okay. All right. John?
Yeah, 100% agree with everything you just said. This album, this part of the reason that this is so difficult is that we all enjoy these albums, but also because they're so intertwined with our lives. And this album was intertwined with my life at about age 19 or 20. And it's like, if you talk about the themes on Fountain of Lamneth of sort of being that age and looking forward to life and what's around the corner and all of that kind of stuff, this album just really spoke to me. And it's a really hard album to beat. And I know that they themselves, Rush Geddes kind of joked about it not being necessarily one of their favorites. But it talking about guitar tone also, Alex, to me, this is where Alex really finds, like, to me, some of his most primo tones are just on this record. I love them. This album really influenced me in 1,000 different ways. So yeah, I have nothing bad to say about this. I think I'm going bald sort of a tease against Kiss that they were touring with. They had a song called something like that.
Going Blind.
Yeah,
Going Blind,
yeah. That song, by the way, if you have the gatefold version, sorry, I got to get it in front of here without tangling myself. You can't see it. Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
so
you got it.
Oh, you've got it. So on the inside, it tells you where they wrote most of those songs.
Yeah.
And I think I'm Going Bald was partly written in Lansing, Michigan. Which has always been a favorite of mine. There was a bar here called, what was that bar called? I can't remember now, but there was a bar here that they used to play a lot. And when you would go into the bar, I didn't go in there until the 80s or 90s. They had a wall that had a big piece of plexiglass, and behind it were the contracts of all the bands that had been playing there. And Rush was in there, ZZ Top, a lot of bands like the Aerosmith. Cool. And it was just a little tiny place. But yeah, so that one has a special place in my heart too.
Yeah, you're right. It does say Lansing right underneath it. Yep. Yeah. Brent?
I'm going to echo a lot of what my friends have said. This is a great album. And when as you and I have talked about before, Brian, when we go through these exercises as a chance to revisit these records, some of which we maybe haven't listened to in a long time, it's a chance to kind of refamiliarize yourself with some of these songs.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing this with the first part of the Rush catalog, I kind of realized how much I really, really, really like this record. Not that I don't, not that I didn't like it, but it's like how much I really, really like it. For me, Bastille Day is the high point as a 5-star track. I gave the Necromancer 4.5 stars. I probably would have given it a 5, but there's a couple spots where it kind of flatlines a little bit. But as a total piece, it really works. And it's really, considering how young these guys were when they made these records and how good this record is, it's amazing. I mean, I can't conceive of doing something like this when I was 23 or 24 years old, but that's what they were doing. It's incredible.
Yeah.
There's no real low point on the record. For me, I gave the lowest rating, Fountain of Lamnet, I gave it a 3, and I gave a 3.5 to I Think I'm Going Bald. But it's just really, really, really solid. And it's got a kind of a dark quality to it. It's like Josh said, it's heavy. It's kind of heavy metal prog. But it's kind of got some darkness to it, which I really like, because the first album is really not that way. And so they've moved a great deal in a really short period of time from that first album to this. It's a fantastic transition. Love this record. It's great. I love it.
The funny thing about doing these ratings is if you had asked me, beforehand between these 3 albums, between the first 3 Rush albums, which would you rate the highest? My thought would be Caress of Steel. It may pan out that way. It may not. We'll wait till the end here. But an album that's consistently really good, start to finish, might not necessarily rate higher or lower than an album that has peaks or valleys. It's how much do those valleys take an album down? How much do the peaks bring it up? To me, this is between the first 3 is the most consistent. Straight through. It's the most consistent album straight through. There's nothing on it that I would skip. The thing about it to me is it's almost all consistent. Like it's so consistent that like I can't pick it a peak. I mean, I might as well just close my eyes, and point at one or something, because it's almost impossible, for me to pick. There's no valley, so I can't pick a low point on this record.
Can I say one thing?
Is it consistently a 3 or consistently a 5? That's a whole other ball of wax. But it kind of comes out really kind of really at that 3.5 to 4. If I average the numbers, 3.5 to 4. So it's really solid. I gave nothing on here a 5 though. That's the thing.
Can I make another comment real quick?
Yeah,
sure. Some people kind of poo-poo the spoken word stuff on the record, and I'm going to give a special shout out to Return of the Prince. That part of that song is so good. Alex's guitar is so cool, and it's kind of like he would hear him do stuff like this later on in their career. But they'd never done anything like that really at that point. And that is so cool. That's such a cool part of that song. I absolutely love that. Love it. I never get tired of it.
Have you guys noticed that on these first 3 albums, we're talking about Alex far more consistently than we're talking about the other guys?
Yeah.
And it's like, I've always felt that Alex never really quite got his due, compared to Geddy and Neil, but we're giving it to him.
Oh, we are. Nice. It's a rhythm section band, in a lot of ways. And Alex, but to me, Alex just stands out all over the place.
Yeah.
And he really does shine on this record for sure.
Yeah. I don't
big time.
I don't care what Paul Stanley thought of this record.
Nor do I.
It's Paul Stanley, but
cool.
Anyway, so okay. I'm ready to move on. You guys are 2112 or
move on.
Okay. All right. Okay. The big breakthrough that, everybody points to. Can I start with a thought on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing against side 1, the title track. It's great. It's fine. I love it. but I like side 2 more than I like side 1. I like side 2 more than the extended piece. And I always have. I'm not trying to be contrarian. It's just kind of the way it pans out. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that? You know,
So this is a
I-
weird thing to say, and I think this will be controversial, but here's what I would say. 2112, side 1, okay, so it's their second sidelong epic, because, you know, Fountain of Lemnath is their first sidelong epic. And I think that 2112 is better. It's a better song than Fountain of Lemnath, but I actually like Fountain of Lemnath more. If you said right now which one do you
Yes.
want to listen to, I'm more likely to say I think I'm gonna listen to Fountain of Lemnath because it's a little it may not be as good, it may not be as well crafted as 2112, but I actually think it's a little more interesting than 2112.
I agree. I
Yep.
agree. Yep. Yep.
And I rated 2112 higher, and yet I think you're right. So the rating is such a strange and odd thing to do, because sometimes it's like part of what goes into the rating for me was like, how influential was this, and you know, in addition to how much did I personally like it, is also how well was it done and all of those other things. But
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean I want to listen to it more than something else. It's my first 5 is 2112 as the
Wow.
as a song is my first 5. And I did end up reading Ayn Rand's terrible novel after that, but it's very short, fortunately, and so I
Oh.
didn't spend a whole lot of time. Anthem, yeah. But you know, but
Okay.
it's a great album. It's just a fantastic record.
Yeah.
And
Now, you did mention Tears earlier as is that a low point for you?
it is definitely on my low point list. I will say on a personal note that the first time I ever tried to learn a song on the guitar, that was the song for some reason that I tried to learn. I have no idea why. But that was it. But yeah, so that was a 2. And I've
Wow.
never, the other one, you guys are gonna hate this, and I apologize in advance, but I have never connected with the Twilight Zone. I like the music. I do not like the lyrics. I know what he was trying to do. I know where it came from, but it just never connected with me.
Have you heard Steven Wilson's cover of it?
Yes.
And I think it's
kind of liked it.
fantastic. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Josh, you might remember, you know, we used to drive around a lot and listen to Rush and stuff. And when Twilight Zone would come on, we'd kind of plug our noses and kind of mimic Getty.
Yeah.
So it has a nostalgia element for me. But you know, the thing about Tears is I hear Mellotron and I just melt. I mean, I absolutely love Mellotron. So it's like, I mean, they could have ripped a fart over a Mellotron and I would be like, that's a 5, you know. But if I were to pick a high point, a single high point, I can do it with this album. Where I can't do it with Crest of Steel because it's so consistent, but with 2112 it's Lessons.
Yep.
I was actually mowing the lawn this morning or earlier, you know, today, and I had my ear things in and my noise canceling stuff so I could listen to it, and I was listening to this album again, and Lessons, it's just, I'm mowing the front lawn and it's like 100 degrees out and I'm getting goosebumps, chills. Just Getty's vocal right up there with that lead line in there. So that's my high point. Brent?
I agree. Lessons is a 5-star song. I gave 5 stars to 2112. I agree with John. Tears is a low point. I gave that 2.5 stars. I thought I would give like Passage to Bangkok a higher rating. I gave it 3.5.
So did I.
It's Something for Nothing. I also gave that 3.5. So this record, as I was going through it, is not as consistent as Crest of Steel, and even despite the fact that it has 2 really, really strong tracks in the title track and Lessons. Lessons is probably one of my top 5 favorite Rush songs of all time. That the rhythm guitar, the melody, it's such a beautiful track. Love it to death. I never get tired of hearing that song. No.
And we'll find out at the end here whether or not the peaks and valleys how that weighs against the consistency of an album like Caress of Steel. Josh?
Yeah, well, one other thing, John made an interesting point, and Brian, you and I have talked about this, where you guys, I think maybe a couple people have said this. I rated this song higher than this, or whatever, but I would go back and listen to this more. And you and I talked about that when we were doing the Van Halen discussion. We specifically talked about, well, I rated this record, maybe higher than this other one, but I go to this other record more often, and that's interesting that it comes up again in this discussion. Mm-hmm. So it's something that we're seeing, and it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, Josh.
What is a step back for me from Caress of Steel as a record? I like Caress of Steel more. I think there's some great stuff on 2112. I mean, I love side one. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's great, but it's not my favorite thing they've ever done. Passage to Bangkok, a little bit. But I agree with you, Brian, that I think side 2 is actually better. It's more interesting to me. You've got I like the Twilight Zone. It's a goofy ass song, and it's an experiment. Maybe it's just it's kind of almost like Rivendell, and it's an experiment. I love it just because of what it is, and I can listen to it anytime. I gave it a 4.5. Lessons is 5. I actually really like Tears. And I think when I was younger, I overlooked Tears because it was, it's a little slower of a song, and it just wasn't very Rush-like when I was a kid. But as an adult, I love Tears. I gave that a 4.5 as well. So I think there's definitely some higher points on side 2, and it's more interesting. But overall, I think it's their first step back in their career for me.
Did Hugh Syme play the Mellotron on that?
I believe that's correct.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I know he did the stuff at the beginning of 2112, but I wasn't sure about the Mellotron. I think he may have.
Well, we can find out.
Yeah.
Oh, no, way too small to read in a podcast, so
okay.
We'll put it in the comments later, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
So am I the only one who was young and innocent and was not aware of what the subject matter of A Passage to Bangkok was for many, 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 many years after hearing the record? Or did everybody else know what that was about except me?
I knew what it was about. Yeah.
It's about a lovely ride on a train.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful ride, and smelling incense and things like that. Yeah.
Incense.
Are you saying it's about something else?
No, I would never dare. No.
Okay. Yeah. And what I think is really interesting is when you listen to these albums, just you can hear that development and that progression, especially songs like Bytor on Fly By Night, and then the extended pieces on Caress of Steel, and then the refinement of a sidelong piece with 2112, and then into Farewell to Kings, which I think, unless if you guys have anything else to say about 2112 before we move to Farewell to Kings. Because I felt a segue there, but
yep.
Run with it.
To me, Farewell to Kings, despite the fact that the cover is actually a shot of Toronto, it sounds so English to me, which is so appropriate given the fact that it was recorded in England. But oh my God, what a record. I mean, again, this is where it gets really tough. It's like, what's a low point? What's a high point? On any given day, I could flip a coin between Xanadu, the title track, and Cinderella Man. With Cygnus X1, to me, the thing that kind of holds that back from being a real 5 is sometimes Geddy's shrieking in the end just is a little overboard for my taste. But I mean, I'm picking here. I'm just nitpicking at that point. So I don't know. What do you guys think? High points, low points?
Yeah, Xanadu, I mean, in terms of a great song, that's a great song. And that's a song that, the bands I've been in have played quite a few times because it's just a really fun song to play too. And then that's sort of the era when I know Neil was really tricking out his kit before that, but for some reason I always think of Xanadu in this era as like the beginning of the mega kit with, all of the orchestra, percussion, and all of that stuff. They get the Taurus pedals going to a greater extent. It's a great song. It's a great sounding song. Cygnus X1, I'm a sacrilegious Rush fan in that I don't care for that much because I don't like. I know it's difficult to play, but it's very repetitious, and I don't like repetitious things. Like repetitious riffs that repeat over and over and over again are not a thing that holds my attention. So even though I personally like the riffs that are there, just sort of the way it's constructed, it didn't work for me either all that well.
What did you rate that song? Would you rate it, John?
Yeah, what would you rate it?
Cygnus X1, Book 1, The Voyage, and so forth. I gave that a 2.5.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow. But
I'm harsh.
What, though?
I'm harsh.
Your explanation of it, though, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I don't necessarily, it doesn't bother me the same way it kind of maybe grates on you a little bit, but it makes sense. I can remember when I saw the Counterparts tour with my buddy Matt in Moline, Illinois. They ended the show, with just teasing that main riff from Cygnus X1, and of course that's the days before internet and stuff. And so we thought, oh my God, they're going to play Cygnus X1. They played like what, 2 bars from it.
Yeah.
And it's like then they, it's like that's a really mean way to leave your audience. Like they're really cruel.
Well, I will say, if they had played it, this is another thing about rating things. I would love to have seen that song played live. As much as I wouldn't say I dissed it, but as much as I put it in a lower category of my favorites than others, if they had played that live, I would have freaked out completely. So I would have loved to have seen that song live, and I would have enjoyed it as a live experience, which for me is somehow different than a recorded experience.
Yeah. Brent, Josh, what is your take on Cygnus X1? Since that's John's a low point for John on the record.
Well, Josh, you want to take that, and I'll follow you.
Sorry, just a quick correction. The low point on that record for me was Madrigal, which came in as a 2.
Yeah, okay.
Just wanted to make sure the record was.
Yeah, I think it's a nice piece.
It's nice.
I like Madrigal, and it serves its kind of place in the flow of the album.
Yeah.
But I could see where it would be a low point for a listener. Sure. Yeah. So Josh, what were you gonna?
This is the album where I think Rush approaches perfection. I do, for me, Madrigal is a bit of a low point, so I agree with that. But I still give it a 3.5 because I think it fits the flow. This is the first Rush album with multiple 5s for me. Xanadu is a 5, Cinderella Man's a 5, Cygnus X1's a 5. All 3 of those songs, to me, those are perfect songs. And Cygnus X1 is such an odd piece because they're getting, they've been storytelling through their music up to this point. They've been doing it, but there's something I think a little more visceral in Cygnus X1 that I just absolutely love, and leaving it on a cliffhanger. And I love that ending with him shrieking. I've always loved it. It's fantastic. So yeah, this album came in really, really high for me. Love it.
Okay, Brent.
I agree that Madrigal, I gave that 3 stars. That's the lowest ranking I gave on this record. High points for me is Xanadu. That's one of the greatest Rush songs ever. I also like Cygnus X1 just because it's so tripped out and weird. It's just so different from anything else they've done. And I do also like the way it ends. I find that to be, another example of their crafty and strange sometimes songwriting, and it's done so well on that track. But Xanadu for me is probably one of the greatest songs that any band's ever recorded. It's just, I get the chills every time that the intro to that song. I can't. I have to rewind and listen to that over and over and over and over again. When the birds come in and the bells come in and the build up to that, it's magic. love it to death.
Yeah.
And Getty's bass tone on this record is so pristine, so powerful. And you've got, I didn't give Farewell to Kings, I gave it a 4 stars. I gave Cinderella Man 4 stars. Those are really, really, really good songs. This is such a good album. This is like Josh said. I wouldn't say it's a perfect record, but it's so good. It's leaps and bounds better than the debut. In Fly By Night, and they're still in transition. They're still perfecting their craft. And this, and again, they were in their 20s when they did this. It's amazing to think that.
And this is 3 years after those albums you mentioned came out.
Yeah.
3 years they go from Rush to A Farewell to Kings. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah. And Xanadu is so good. You don't even have to mention it, right? It's like you bring up the album of Farewell to Kings and it's like, well, yeah, there's Xanadu, right? We get it. It's perfection. But what about the other songs? Because I mean, songs like Cinderella, I love Cinderella Man. I love the title track. And it's like, that's just a testament to how good this album is. And I think, I was fortunate enough to see, and Josh, I think you were with me on all these shows. Brent, you were with me on a couple of them. We saw the R40 tour 3 times, Lincoln, Nebraska, Chicago, and then Kansas City. And at the Lincoln show, we were on Getty's side of the stage. We were kind of lower level, right there. Great seats right on the side. And then in Chicago, Josh, you might remember this, Brent, maybe you do. We had nosebleeds at the United Center.
Yeah.
We were like the last row. I mean, we were in outer space, right? The only thing that I actually remember from the Chicago show that was a real takeaway was at the end of Xanadu, because all of the lights like pointed upwards from the lighting truss up into the ceiling. And it's something, if you're down below, you couldn't see it. So when you're way up high at the end of that, all those lights with that guitar line just kind of ringing out, and it was just like, oh, wow, that's so cool. So every time I hear Xanadu now, I always think of that show at the United Center, and it's the one time where I'm actually grateful for nosebleed seats. I wouldn't have been grateful for nosebleed seats if it was the only show I ever saw, but
right.
So, but
right.
yeah. So that just kind of gets, John, you said something earlier about how you connect some of these songs to your experiences, and to have a song that you've loved for decades and then to be able to attach another experience to it late in the game, so to speak, is kind of cool.
Well, and that song really stands out for me. Xanadu in particular really stands out for me on the Exit Stage Left video, which was, that's also a thing that really got me into Rush hugely, was just that 1 hour filmed video. And they start the beginning with the birds and Neil's talking and saying philosophical stuff. And I was just like, my young mind was blown. And it's, they get out the double necks and it's like, come on, the dry ice. It's like,
did you and Joel like basically wear that VHS tape out?
There were parts of that tape that were unviewable when we were done, because it literally, we had wiped whatever the magnetic stuff was off of that tape and it would just garble for a few seconds.
It's awesome. Funny you say that. My first Rush record was Exit Stage Left. I remember I ordered it from, I think, like the BMG Music Company, and I had that record, and side 3 with I think the Bruins Bane, the Trees, and Xanadu. I think that was side 3. It's been a while, but that was just like it. That was the magic ticket into. I gotta get into this, man. This is the greatest thing I've ever heard.
I would.
I'm gonna go back tonight and listen to that live version of Xanadu from Exit Stage Left.
I think it's the thing that also made me want to play the guitar. Just seeing that, it's like, okay, you don't have to look like some of the other guys that are out there. You can be like kind of smart and geeky and still rock and play guitar. So I would also credit that with me wanting to learn how to play an instrument, which was pretty great.
Hey, if you see me kind of distracted, it's my dog Louise. She's trying to get me to take her out, but she can hold it. It's fine. I will say if my light goes crazy, it's because she's knocked it over, and I apologize in advance if that happens. But so Yeah, I'm sorry, Josh, were you saying something?
No, I just I mean, I think that we're it's interesting just some of the patterns and some of the areas of agreement and some of the areas where we don't see it the same way. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll be curious to see the last entry in this set of Rush albums, what you guys think of this, because Hemispheres is really valuable, really special to me. I learned to drive. Dad took me out to practice driving and interstate driving and stuff. And I had Hemispheres and Iron Maiden's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son on cassette. Most of the stuff I had was on vinyl, or on CD by a certain point. But for some reason I had those two albums on cassette, and so he let me play those while we went out driving. So I always kind of associate Seventh Son of a Seventh Son and Hemispheres with learning how to drive, and Dad's kind of lucid moments where he was actually kind of open to what we were listening to, which wasn't always the case, but he kind of gave a little bit of a weird approval to those albums, because he could kind of sense that there was a musicality there that maybe wasn't in some of the other stuff that we were listening to. And I think that Hemispheres is just perfect. I mean, I know that they talk about how they didn't realize that the key that they recorded in was a little too tough for Getty, and his voice is so high on it. And I don't care. I absolutely love this record. But if you forced me to pick a low point, and I'd like to start with a low point if it's okay with you guys, I have to say The Trees is the low point for me on the album, even though it's a great song. Like if I was, if you said you have to pick a song to not listen to on this record, I would have to say The Trees, even though I like it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, there's only 4 songs, so
well, and that does play into, like, well, I mean, if you have a full side track like Hemispheres, and Hemispheres more so than like Lam Nef and 2112 really flows together, whereas the other sidelong pieces, you can kind of break them apart a little bit. Is it really fair to weigh, if you're trying to quantify an album, is it really fair to weigh a full side against a song like The Trees, which is less than 5 minutes? And I think that's where a little bit of a judgment call comes in terms of the overall ratings, but I mean, God, this album is just so good. I mean, and when they played on the Snakes and Arrows tour, when they played Circumstances, it was like, oh my God, they're playing Circumstances live.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Anyway, well, you take it. That's about all I can say.
Anybody?
Yeah, anybody?
I also have this as a highly rated record. The first, I mentioned that, the stuff I didn't like about Cygnus X1 kind of also carries over into Hemispheres, and is horribly sacrilegious for any Rush fan to say that they might knock that down a little bit just because of all the repetitiveness. But the fact that it's so hard and so good actually bumps it up above, obviously Cygnus X1 for me. So, yeah, La Via Strangiato is another one up there for me. That's I wouldn't say I'd like it as much as Xanadu, but to me it's in the same sort of ether as Xanadu. It's just a great song. It's really fun. And I have to say, of all the things Alex does on every single record, probably my single favorite moment is when they break down and it's just Alex. They've got that real low synth, and Alex, it's an object lesson to me in how to build a guitar solo. He starts out slow, he starts out quiet, he starts out sort of with a lot of space, and he just builds and builds and builds that thing until the end. And not only does it sound great, it's written really well, and the tone is fantastic. And I just think that to me is one of the high points of pretty much any record I have. and especially of Rush records. That's just so good. And I really also love this record.
Can I build off that for a second? Because I had the VHS of A Show of Hands before I had Hemispheres. And I just kind of like you with the Exit Stage Left video, I played the Show of Hands video just over and over and over again. And that solo, they had like the lasers, kind of like the green lasers kind of going out over the audience, and it just, again, goosebumps,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Have you seen I'm assuming you've seen the Pink Pop version of that song from like the late 70s?
Yeah.
It's just
I know. I know.
Mind blowing.
If anybody has stumbled across this video and is watching it this far in, they're a Rush geek too, and they get it. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And they're mad at me for dissing some of their favorite songs, but that's okay. I can live with that.
You've earned the right. Right. Brent?
Great album. Cygnus X1 Book 2, 5 stars. Lovilla Strangiato, 5 stars. Like John said, Lovilla Strangiato is right up there with Xanadu in terms of their really, not their 20-minute songs, but their nice 10, 9, 10, 11-minute pieces, what have you. I would agree with Brian that The Trees, if I had to pick one, is probably my least favorite song on the record. I still gave it 4 stars.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say the record's perfect because I didn't give everything 5 stars, but it's pretty darn close. And this is kind of like a really nice way for them to end this first phase of their career, shall we say, as we're going through the first 6 records. I dare say in 1978 there probably weren't many, if any, records released that year that were as good as this one. This is a gem in my catalog. It's probably a gem in all your catalog as well. This album is so good, and I don't get tired of it ever. There's nothing on this album that I don't like. And we talked about how some of these songs just kind of resonate with you. The one thing I like about Lovilla Strangiato is all those goofy notes, like in the inlay, the different names they put to the different parts of the song. It's like, if you just listen to the song sounds really cool, right? But then you read the notes and stuff, and they're all these goofy things that kind of makes you think maybe Alex had a hand in this, because they're obviously having a lot of fun with it. But what an amazing song. I mean, it's like, who comes up with this stuff? Nobody else writes songs like this. And a really good band or a really good artist or player is someone, when you hear them, that's them. And you hear that with these guys. There's just nobody else did anything even close to this.
A really good band when they rip off Looney Tunes.
Yeah. Do you want to know, you said it has to be better than anything that came out that year. I happened to make some notes. The top 3 songs of that year were Shadow Dancing by Andy Gibb, Night Fever by the Bee Gees, and You Light Up My Life by Debbie Boone.
Night Fever is great. I'll give you that. Night Fever is great, but I'll probably take I'll take Lovilla Strangiato over stuff.
Yeah.
So they're doing things that are just so far outside of what most people are doing.
Yeah, they're pushing the envelope, and they're doing it so well. And it's like these are experiments that work. And it's like, this is mastercraft songwriting. It's like, I'm awestruck.
Yeah. Josh, to me, when I look at the first 6 albums, it's like a hike in the mountains. It's like you can see that they're going from the trailhead, and they're going through different terrain and eventually reaching
the Fountain of Lamneth.
And yes. Right. And I think the nice thing about closing this conversation on Hemispheres is that Permanent Waves kind of starts another track, another set for them. But Josh, you haven't really said much yet on Hemispheres, so
it's about as perfect a record can be, I think. And you know, Hemispheres I give a 5, La Villa 5. I will say, and I don't want to belabor it, but I think, in my opinion, I think La Villa Strangiato is probably the best instrumental ever written. And I would say that the solo in it, Alex's guitar solo in it, is not just my favorite Alex Lifeson solo, it is actually my favorite guitar solo of all time. So the musicianship's just amazing. The only thing about this album is, you know, I love the other two songs. Circumstances I gave a 4. Trees I gave a 4.5. I think I like it a little more than you guys, maybe. But you know, so the album doesn't come out perfect, but when you look at the length of time, because La Villa and Hemispheres are so much longer, but the number that I actually got for the song when I calculated the record is probably a little bit lower than it should be, just because the length of the songs. But that's fine. I think it just suffices to say that this album gets into a level of perfection. It's definitely a desert island album for me. You know, it's just it's as close to a perfect record as I think there can be. And the musicianship is, you know, I think they said it themselves. I think they were playing a little above their level, and it's just freakish. It's freakish as far as just how they're playing, and not just playing great, but crafting songs that are great. And sometimes you hear songs, particularly in the prog world, that it's like, yeah, the musicianship is great, but you know, how musical is it really? And they're really striking all. They're just firing on all cylinders here.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So do you guys want to do a countdown, number 6 to number 1 here?
Yeah,
I do.
You have your props ready here?
I do.
What we'll do is we'll do them together, and we'll hold them up so we can kind of see the 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So and just a reminder to I guess to ourselves that even the 6th, even the lowest rated album, is still an album we love, because we love everything Rush has ever done. So
yes,
are you guys ready with your last place pick?
yes.
Okay, here we go. Ready to go?
Oh.
Brent.
Interesting.
Brent.
Oh.
Rivendell just brought it right down for him.
Yeah.
That has to be the case, right, Brent? Rivendell sank that for you.
But I still gave it over 3 stars on average. It's 66.25% over 3 stars. So yeah, but it's my least favorite of the 6.
Okay.
So I have a question before we do number 5.
Sure.
I have a tie, and neither of them got my bonus adjustment point. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the tiebreaker here. So I'm just going to go off the top. I'm just going to make a guess.
Well, you know, my thought, when that happened, because that happened to me too.
Okay.
I just kind of thought, well, what am I apt to go to more often?
Okay.
So, but you know, you use whatever you want. I mean, hey, it's your ranking, not mine. So
That's right.
And it's like I have 3 that are all within a point, so it's really hard.
it is.
All
Yeah.
right.
Okay, number 5. You ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Wow.
None of us had the same number 5.
We all had a different number 5.
Fascinating.
Wow. And I just want to say, my number 5 here is more consistent than my number 4. It's just that the peaks and valleys averaged out differently. So
yeah.
Okay.
Rivendell on that album, my friend.
Okay. Number 4.
Ready?
Ready? Brent and Josh have the same number 4. John and I have the same number 4, right? Okay. Josh, you have the anniversary edition there, I see.
Yep.
He does.
Number 3.
Gotta make sure I got the right one. Okay, I've got it.
Okay. Number 3.
Hey, Josh, we agree on a lot of things. We really do.
Josh, I'm kind of surprised that came in at number 3.
I'm not, when you consider how highly he speaks of what I think are coming, or the albums that are coming
Well, that's
degree
true.
is so close. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is, the degree between these last three is so close.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Between my number 3 and number 2, it's separated by barely over a point. So
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Number 2. Brent and I. Oh, Josh, you have the anniversary edition there of Farewell to Kings. So, John, you
I'm the outlier.
you are. So, wow, number 2. Okay.
that's really
Leslie
cool.
Steele comes in at number 2 for John. All right.
I think we're all going to agree on what's
Again,
number
not necessarily going to go to it, but
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
Well,
number
this-
1.
anticlimactic.
yeah.
And again, Josh with the anniversary edition there. We all agree Hemispheres number 1. Okay. Now, I think what's going to be kind of interesting, assuming we can stick with this, is when we do the next set, we'll be rating the next set as a set, and then the last 7 albums as a set. But then how does the whole catalog actually pan out in the very end? Could be kind of interesting, I think. So,
well, the point system really does change things for me, because I know, like, I'm not going to give anything away, but in the next set, I know which album would be my Desert Island album, and yet there is another album that is rated higher because of the quality of the individual songs and their ratings. So sometimes it's like the Desert Island album might have like 1 or 2 great songs, and you're willing to, shift for the others, whereas there might be another album that has higher grade. It's the whole thing is numerical.
yeah. And Brent and I have talked about this with the Van Halen stuff. It's like, I mean, if someone wants to try to, oh, well, there's this problem with a rating system, or there's that problem with a rating system. To us, the system is just designed to kind of foster a conversation, and that's what we're getting, because we're music geeks, we're Rush geeks, so it's serving the purpose, I guess.
It's kind of like everything that we're talking about in all 19 of these albums are already the cream of the crop and way better than 99.9% of anything else out there. It's just a matter of which ones do we like more or less. So if we give something a lower rating, it has no bearing on whether we actually enjoy it or like it or think it's good.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
the difference between Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres for me was 0.02. So
wow.
that tells you that tells you the difference.
Yeah, for me it was 8 points. So there was a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
Between...
I had a bigger gap too. 8. I also had
between your lowest and highest, or just between those two?
Those two.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think, John, to your point, I was thinking about this earlier. To me, like a 3.5 or 4 star, 3.5 or 4 star Rush song is, in my opinion, almost always, if not always, going to be better than a 3.5 or 4 star Led Zeppelin song. Nothing against Led Zeppelin. I just like Rush more.
Yeah.
So, it's, again, it gets back to that problem of trying to quantify something that's inherently qualitative, but it is what it is.
But it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, I'm glad. Josh, did you say something?
I just said it's fun to try. I mean, and the other thing I'll say, and I did, I know these albums so well, but to do this, I did pull them out and listen to them. And I listened to them over 2 nights. I broke them into 2 groups of 3 and listened to them over 2 nights. And it is amazing to me, just cranking them up, how good they make me feel. And I mean, I remember one of the days it had been kind of a rough day at work and just not the best day, but I put those albums on. I think it was Crest of Steel was that moment where I just realized this makes me feel really good. I mean, this is it brings so much back, not just nostalgia, but I love it just as much now, maybe more now than I did back when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
Excellent.
If you guys do you guys have any last comments on the early part of the Rush catalog before we close things out?
I think the only thing I would say is that there is sort of this contingent of the fan base out there that kind of feels like after a certain point, it's like, oh, they got into too much of the synths, or they got into too much of this or that or the other thing. And I really love all of these old albums, but I have to say I also really love the stuff that's coming up and the stuff that's coming after. And there are a lot of things coming up still that I love more than the older albums. So I guess maybe it's because of where I came into it, but yeah, one of the things I think we can all probably agree we appreciate about Rush is that they always changed and kept us guessing and tried to experiment and tried things, sometimes with success, sometimes without. But I never felt like I was listening to the same record over and over and over again. Every one of these has its own fingerprint, and I respect them all.
That's a great point. I think it's a great point to end on. Okay, so here's what I'd like for you guys to do. We're not gonna spend too much time plugging Underlords of the Overworld or the Underlords universe. Just a quick bit on it. And for you guys, when I stop recording, I'd like for you guys to stick around so we can have just a little post-recording powwow about where we go from here. But if you've watched this, you are probably either a huge Rush fan or really bored or both. But we like to write and record our own stuff. A lot of it's been instrumental because it's been hard to find someone who could sing, let alone find a drummer. But we do write and record stuff under the name Underlords of the Overworld. And the title or name Underlords of the Overworld is just kind of we'd like to think it's a clever way of saying a bunch of nobodies or a bunch of lesser knowns, underground, so to speak. And we also have a fictional kind of alternate history adventure series written by H. Prescott Lemon, who may or may not be looking at you right now on the screen. And there's an extension to what we call the Underlords fictional universe, the OAO, which is kind of an occult, quirky occult adventure series as well. Brent, Josh, anything you guys want to add to that? If anybody's interested in checking out our own stuff, we're going to put a link in the YouTube description. But you guys want to say anything about that before we move along?
No, I would just say that it's really cool and fun stuff, and we're currently working on new stuff. So it's a very exciting time to be a part of the Underlords universe. Good stuff in the hopper.
I would also add that I think that growing up listening to bands like Rush inspired us to want to create weird music and probably even weirder stories. And I think all of this stuff ties together. So you can see our influences here talking about Rush, and that kind of tells you where we go creatively and how we approach creativity and what we want to do creatively. Huge influence.
I agree with that. I think, some people have come up to me and said that they hear Rush in a lot of what we do, which is a huge compliment. Clearly not the players that they are, but I think, Josh, you made a really good point. I mean, hopefully the influences that we grew up on, you can hear that in the music that we write and record, and that's hearing that from somebody who's listened to us is a huge compliment. And
I think one of the things that I really liked from I think I learned from Neil Peart is just a mindset of if you're gonna do something, try to do it well. Take time to actually concern yourself with the craft of what you do. And not just spit something out, but really take some thoughtful consideration to what you're trying to create. And we just like to kind of try to support local artists, musicians, writers, etc. And because that's what we are, with regular old jobs, just having fun trying to do our own thing. So if anybody's interested, there's links in the description. We are going to schedule a part 2 of this, but until then, I'm gonna sign off. We'll stop this recording, and you guys stick around, and we'll continue to discuss our where we go from here. Okay, so Everybody, ciao.
Later.